Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I am Luce. You recognize Juice, but we have a special guest again, 2 weeks in a row, and we're super excited to talk to him today. He's from Just Baseball Media, ESPN Plus. Literally, go look up his LinkedIn. It's a freaking rap sheet of things that this man has done. Mr. Jack McMullen. Jack, first off, thank you again for joining us, man. And how's things going in the middle of February?
All good in the crossroads of America in downtown Indianapolis. I was telling you guys before you hit the record button. I'm sorry I didn't exchange the Mark Burley painting in the background, but Kyle Taylor, a St. Louis-based artist, commissioned that for me, and I'm like, I can never take that down ever, and that's going to be in my home forever and ever. So very excited to chat Cubs with you guys. And Juice and Loose, that didn't really click for me until you just said it right now, and I noticed that Juice didn't smile when you did your big hello. That's awesome, man. Like, you bring
Hey, thank you. Hey, he's sick of it by now. I mean, if we do the math on how many shows we've done together, we might as well at this point, like, we have probably talked to each other more than some members of our own family. I mean, that's the level of territory we're hitting here at Cubs on.
And Jack too, like, I got new headphones here. They really, reverberate back into the eardrum.
Yeah.
So the last couple of times it's been a getting used to.
And it's lighting your brain up.
Yeah, gotcha. and it's Ron, and he's got to scream like an idiot every episode.
I'm loud.
But
hey,
loud. It's okay. The fans love it. Everybody loves it.
I get it, man.
It's fun, man. But Jack, we're excited to talk with you, man. Obviously, I mean, you've got a wealth of baseball knowledge, not only from what you're doing in the broadcast world, but obviously with Just Baseball Media. But it's, in our eyes, worth other people getting to know you, because there might be some people that just haven't had the opportunity to listen to you guys over at Just Baseball yet. And if they're not, I highly recommend everybody go take a listen to you guys. But I mean, we were talking beforehand, and like, your media career list is so long. It's almost like overwhelming to an extent. You've been everywhere, like WGN as an intern. Obviously now you're doing a lot with ESPN Plus, the Indianapolis Indians, AAA baseball as the play-by-play. Like, what do you love most right now just about calling baseball?
So calling baseball is a very unique place to kind of like work some muscles in your brain that you never really thought that you had. And what I mean by that is, like, at the beginning of the play-by-play, tenure of my life, I guess that was probably sophomore year of college. It started. It was lacrosse at Syracuse. I went to Syracuse. They didn't have a baseball team. It was like, hey, first chance you got was lacrosse. And then it was, okay, let's go do basketball. And then let's go do football. The thing about those three is there's no time to talk about anything other than the game. And I'll call a lot of basketball on the radio during the baseball off seasons. And it is, okay, we're back from break. Here are the two reads that I have to do. Ball's inbounded. And now I'm just saying the name of the guy that's controlling the ball in the right wing. With baseball, like, you can talk about whatever the hell you want. And that is the best thing ever. And with how much we consume the game, not only like from a Cubs lens, but through a national lens, I want to talk about all that stuff. It's great. And like your ability to relay that and try and compare it to what's happening on your field of the game that you are calling is a very fun exercise. And the other one is, like, it's a 5-run game in the 8th. What are we going to talk about? That's a unique challenge that you never get in any other game.
Yeah. No, that's, I mean, incredibly well put. And that's something that we talked about a little off air. People here at Cubs on Tap have probably heard me mention it a few times, but that's the one sport I've yet to have the opportunity to call is baseball. And that is, in my eyes, that is always the first thing I pick up, is like, the stories you can tell during a broadcast are so different, right? Yeah. Like you said, right? In basketball, you're trying to fit in, hey, when's the next game? Hey, when's this? Football, to an extent, very much the same way. Baseball, it's America's national pastime for a reason.
Yeah, it's almost slow paced, right? It's like, I go into a basketball game. Yeah, you want to talk about the next opponent. Yeah, you want to talk about their leading scorer. Like, he might be leading the conference in scoring or in 3-point percentage. You might not get to it if the game doesn't allow you to get to it. And if I went into a baseball game with a checklist, I can finish that checklist off in the 5th inning. The matter, like, there's almost this editorial process you go through internally when you're calling a baseball game. And it's like, hey, I've got this story. I can deploy it now, or I can deploy it in the 7th when it may make some more sense. Or I hold it and I deploy it tomorrow because we got 150 of these that we got to do in the minor leagues, or 162 at the big league level. You can hold anything, and it's really up to you when you release certain information. And that, I think, is like so much fun, where it's okay, I could do this now, but is that pressing? Is now the right time to mention this? Or, is there a better opportunity that's coming, or it may never come and I should just hold it?
Yeah.
Is there somebody that when you grew up you listened to that just struck a chord? Because I feel like as you talk to these guys who call games, it's always one or two or three names that got them into it, and they pull different things from, Scully or
Right.
Pat, or it's interesting to hear like who people grew up listening to and then what they pulled from that in the middle of like a game or a strategy, things like that.
So I'm from Oak Park. So it's clearly the Chicago guys. I grew up listening to Hawk constantly, and that is not necessarily the gold standard of mechanical broadcast excellence, but he is the gold standard of baseball fan in the booth. And you can really appreciate the buy-in that Hawk had. But Len and Pat, like Len in particular, I listened to that guy not talk. And I was like, this is so ridiculously comfortable. And I didn't really understand how good you have to be to not talk on TV until I really got into it. But the thing that I appreciated most about Len, and one of the things that I really appreciate about Boog Shambi, really lucky, and Benetti does a great job of it too, is those guys know when to just shut up and let people enjoy baseball. When you start doing it, and Ron, I'm sure you can attest to this in some of the other sports you've done, all you want to do is talk when you start, because you feel the need to like prove yourself in anything. And a lot of the young announcers that you'll hear, and dude, I go back to the tapes that I had in college, even like 2 years ago, I was talking all the time because like, I need to shove more information in here. I need to prove that I'm good enough to do this. The comfortable people, the ones that don't talk, are almost always the best. And we were really lucky because Pat is so patient on the radio, and Len knew when to shut up for 2 pitches, and it was amazing.
Yeah,
I love that. And too, like how often do you go back and watch yourself too and listen and critique? Because I know it's a constant game of reading and reacting of what you learn from and different strategies too. Being how often do you go back?
I'm weird. Like, I'm sure you guys are weird too in your own way. And like, hey, don't be turned off by me as a person, but I do it every day. Like every morning I'll go back and I'll listen to an inning and a half, 2 innings if I'm at the gym, or if I'm just like doing the Wordle on my phone in the New York Times Mini. I always send my score to my girlfriend and my family. I'm like, yeah, under a minute. Let's get Johnny Beebe. But I'll listen to, inning and a half, 2 innings of the game I had done the night before, because that's the only way you hear yourself again. Like that's the only way you improve on what you did. And at the end of the day, like I'm 26 years old in AAA. I have, major league goals. Let's get there. You don't get there by just time. You get there by getting to a point where you are like major league standard. So yeah, every morning.
I love that.
That's awesome. So that's something admittedly I need to get better at, because I might be in the very large minority. I hate the sound of my own voice.
So I hated it too.
Okay.
And it's just something that you have to accept. And, like there are ways I'm sure that you have changed your voice over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But
100%.
For me, it was like, I listened to it the first time. I was like, I sound horrible. I'm loud. I sound young. Like, what am I going to do? My voice is high. It's all a big test. Like, it's all a big touch and feel thing when it comes to every given night. So yeah, the more I listened to it, the more I was like numb to it.
Yeah. As I say, I've gotten a little better, but in the very early part, it was very cringy to like hear my own voice. And I was 100%. Just like, oh my goodness. Like, this is hard, but like you said, I mean, usually, especially in that situation, right? Like the biggest critique, your biggest critic is usually yourself. And that's where you're going to improve. You're going to listen. You're going to pick up on things that you maybe didn't feel in the moment and things like that. And it's like, oh, I could have done that better. I could have thought this, or, and just kind of going and diving through that playbook a little bit of where all of that kind of, melts through and it gets to. But Jack, to pivot a little bit here, we'll get back to the broadcasting, I'm sure, at some point throughout this interview today and discussion. But how did you get to Just Baseball? Because, I mean, you guys have been wildly successful. I mean, huge guests. I mean, I feel like Walker Buehler to you guys is like Justin Steele to us, like just truly a friend of the program at this point. Right. You guys have had him on enough times. Like, how did Just Baseball get its start in the roots? And I mean, the length of time that you've been a part of it, I mean, you've been there for quite a while now. I mean, just explaining to the people, where the roots started and how much it's grown.
So it was a COVID birth. It was, one of those things that it came out of COVID. Aram Layton is one of the co-founders with Peter Apple. And I actually got on a couple of months later than those guys. And there were a couple other people that were helping before I even got on, but they started it, I want to say fall of 2020. When Aram was kind of looking for his own thing to really start. And at that point, I had just finished up calling a video game season for the Fort Wayne Tin Caps. Like, I was supposed to be the number 2 in Fort Wayne, who's the high A affiliate of the Padres. Great setup there. John Nolan's the lead guy there. Awesome. I'm not sure if you guys have talked to Brendan King and Max Thoma at all, but South Bend, those guys are great.
That's where I live, actually, Jack.
Oh, how about
the outfield there?
I love easy. Right by the gift shop. Is it a synagogue that they turned into a gift shop? What's the deal there?
It's I think it's old church.
Old church. It was like a church or a synagogue or something.
Yeah,
it's so cool, man. Four Winds Field.
It's an awesome park.
Yeah,
but Ron's going to come out this summer, and we're going to do a couple days. And the baseball is great. It's been great.
Baseball's
for the last couple of years.
Baseball is awesome. Yeah, but I was in the Midwest League. I was supposed to be there in 20. That got canceled. And I was going back in 21, and it was like February of 2021. And Aram and Peter reached out, and they were like, "Hey, we're in the process of starting a media company. It'll be a website, really, and we want a podcast to accompany that." And the initial plan was 30 minutes twice a week, just have a podcast housed on the website. And I was like, yeah, for sure, I'll do it. Wasn't expecting to make any money off of it or anything. I was just going to do it because I like talking baseball with my friends. And those guys I was friendly with at Syracuse. I was friends with at Syracuse, but we really didn't work together or anything like that at school. And man, we started doing that podcast. And then social media stuff took off, and the podcast started gaining listens, and you blink, and then all of a sudden you open your eyes and you're doing, 5-hour-long episodes a week, and it's whole thing. So yeah, I latched on opening day 2021, and we've been all systems go since then.
That's awesome. I mean, that's super comparable to the On Tap story, and I think that's why that's why I feel like I've enjoyed listening to you guys, because it feels like there's a lot of similarities. Because we started, our roots kind of began in 2018. Our founder Tony him and I actually met through another website, and it was on Blackhawks coverage because we're big hockey guys, and that parlayed to, well, we want to have a Cubs show. And we have a White Sox show, and we're going to get a Bears show going. And then we met Juice and his buddy Buzz, and they were coming from Sports Mockery. And so it was, hey, let's start this thing. And then April 2019, ironically, tax day is our official establishment date.
Nice.
Naturally. Yeah. But April 15th, 2019, boom. On Tap Sportsnet, births, and it's grown considerably over the last few years. So very relatable, but it's always fun to hear the origin stories of these things, because it's it usually is just hey, I kind of want to do something. Let's go for it and just see what happens. And obviously, it's really easy for a lot of media companies, websites, whatever way you want to phrase it, to fold. But you make it those 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, you get into that territory, you're already in kind of the 1% of what's actually successful and able to stay relevant in the market.
100%. And I'm sure you guys have tried things that haven't gone according to plan. I've tried things 100%. That haven't gone according to plan. But what is the plan when you really set out? This is, while we had lofty goals for Just Baseball, it is still far beyond what those lofty goals were. And I'm not going to say beyond our wildest dreams, because our wildest dreams are still way ahead. as I'm sure you guys are too, but the fact that it's even gotten off the ground and is like self-sustainable like it is, you got to take a moment and be like, what the hell did I just do, man? Like, this is awesome. What did we just build as a team? And it's a really special feeling. And I'm sure you guys have felt that feeling with On Tap.
100%. And it's especially even from like a Cubs on Tap standpoint, because our first Cubs podcast was actually called North Side 9. A lot of people don't know this. And it was myself and actually two guys that I played college football with that were fellow offensive linemen, just like me, that were all Cubs fans. And we would talk about the Cubs, usually on a weekly cadence was where we were at.
Yeah, Ron, you were giving me a wide receiver feel, actually. So interesting that you were an O-line.
Well, ironic, because if I stood up, I am a wide potential receiver. So I wish I could have been a wide receiver.
Jack, don't call him out. You'd be surprised, but he scurries pretty quickly.
I love that.
I can move. I can move for
depending how many beers are in him. It's don't challenge him to a race. I've been there.
But no, it grew from that, and then like Juice and myself are kind of two of the original hosts of the show. So like we've been doing these since 2019, and just I still remember posting shows, especially in that 2019 season, because you'll remember, right, the Cubs and that epic collapse at the end of the year, and essentially establishing what ultimately happened in 2021. Like that was the first, oh boy, where is this going? And I remember posting shows and we'd get 10 listens on across podcast, all the platforms. And now it's like, the numbers are better and we're doing crazy good engagement on the live shows. But like you said, right, you watch that evolution of where everything goes, and you're like, would have never expected this if you would have said this is where things are heading in
it's like, what 5 years from now, man. Yeah, it's crazy.
It is. It really is. It's all over the absolutely crazy place. But with just baseball, and I'm sure even just with your broadcasting career as well, you've done so many things. You guys talked to so many people. Do you have a favorite interview that just every time you think about it, you're like, man, that one was really cool. I wanna rewatch that over and over again just because of how great that was.
Yeah, so we actually talked about that on a mailbag episode that we had done like a month or two ago, and I saw you sent that question along, and I was like, this is a good chance for me to think about that, because we've had a lot of really cool guests, and I'm just thinking about like ones that landed really hard for me. I've been really lucky, as I'm sure you guys have been too. I mean, dude, you just got Justin Steele. Like, it's one of those things. First time you get Steele on, it's like, what are we doing here? You almost, your brain like starts spinning a little bit. And for me, I've been really lucky to meet a lot of people that I grew up watching play sports. And I've only been starstruck, like truly starstruck, one time in my life. And it was in the Louisville airport. And I saw Carlos Boozer at baggage claim in the Louisville airport. And I was like,
that's why
I have crossed paths with so many people that were better at their sport than you were at yours. But dude, like the fact that we were sold LeBron, Wade, Bosch, Dwight Howard, and then the Bulls landed on Carlos Boozer, he held a special place in my soul, and I saw him and that unlocked it. So I will say, like, from a sentimental standpoint, the first time we had Walker on, because we knew he was coming on every week while he was rehabbing from TJ, and he'll be on 3 times a month, pretty much every off day that the Dodgers have. He'll be on the Just Baseball show this coming season.
Incredible.
But yeah, first time we had Walker, I was like, we're doing the damn thing. And I was the one, like, first year that we were a podcast, I was pounding the table. I was like, Walker Buehler should win the Cy Young. He didn't. I thought he got gypped. I still think he got gypped. But another Cubs angled one that I really loved is we've got a show on our network called Show and Go with Taylor Davis. And Taylor was a Cub for a hot minute. He was Iowa Cubs legend.
Oh yeah. Taylor's the best.
Yeah. But he had his friend from the minor leagues, Dylan Cease, on. And like Cease hops in the Zoom, and I'm like, all right, you're the Cy Young runner up, but like you were also the young pup that Taylor Davis took under his wing in South Bend and Myrtle Beach. This is so unique. And hearing those two talk and just interjecting with a couple of questions, I was like, what do we got building here, man? This is crazy.
That is cool. I was just saying, because like even in our case, right? Like, yeah, we've had Justin on, but we've had a lot of fun in the past with guests interviewing some of the guys that are prospects.
Mhm.
And it's fun now in hindsight watching their careers unfold, because we've had guys like Cole Roeder on the show and Cole Franklin and Jordan Wogu, and like that list goes on. And it's like, it's really cool to see like where they progress through. And in hindsight, right, like just seeing how all that plays out. But yeah, the Justin one was the craziest one. And that's just because like he almost found us in a way.
Yeah.
And then now it's just become this thing where like he's going to at least be at minimum a yearly guest. And, you know, I don't know, maybe we can, him and Tyler Edmonds, one of our other co-hosts, are big sports card guys. So we've told them they can do like weekly shows on Justin's off days and just talk sports card if they want. And that's going to be the Cubs on Tap show for the week. It might get to that point. But Jack, quickly before we keep moving forward, just want to show some love to the comments. The fun part about doing this live, everybody's saying, hey, how's everybody doing? The South Bend having the cool park. Duncan's cards here. He's brain spinning because his YouTube subs are colliding. As he says up here with Just Baseball and with us. And unfortunately, they are. They're fun. They're fun. And like Darren says here, apparently he was very slow in his football playing days. I'm not fast for the record. I've never broken a 5 flat on a 40-yard dash. So I'm not.
It's all about footwork, right? It's all about the first step. Were you a tackle or a guard?
I played all 5 spots on the line at one point in my life.
See? Athlete.
You're a chameleon. Yeah.
I did. Yeah. I was the Ben Zobrist of the offensive line in college.
Hell yeah.
Because
I really, really good at getting the Jerry Seinfeld early start, you know, the car backfiring and that being the ticker to go off.
Yeah.
He's damn good at that.
Gotcha.
It's fun. Well, we'll have to chit chat about the old playing days at some point, but it's so much fun. But Jack, who's someone in baseball, you know, past or present, that like you want to interview? Like, what would be your like, this is my greatest of all time interview? Who is it?
So the 2 guys that are on my back wall here, Burley and Bonds. Bonds is like number 1 for me. He is such a layered story. Yes. And I would love to try and get into that. He wouldn't do it, I know, but like Bonds is number 1. Another one too, and I'm not just saying this because it's like a Cubs show. Theo fascinates me. Yes. I would love to talk to Theo Epstein. The guy that is the messiah of the Boston Red Sox and the Chicago Cubs, broke about 200 years worth of curses. Like what do you know that nobody else knows? Like, what do you do that's different? And all I want to do is figure out what makes that guy tick the way he does. I have so many questions about why he's the greatest executive maybe of all time.
Yeah. I think too, just to double down on the idea of Theo, Jack, it's like on top of it, we would love to hear like what his thoughts on baseball are, right? Because it felt like he went into the MLB front office, and then we got the pitch clock, and then we got, you know, well, we need more triples and doubles, and you know,
bigger bases,
faster, you know, the plays, the bang bang plays that get people excited throughout a game. And Juice created the tinfoil hat take years ago. This is 2021. I
was ahead of my time for once ever.
It really was. It really was, because the Cubs started building this roster and everybody's like, what are they doing? And Juice goes, nobody has Theo's ear now that he's in the front office more than Jed Hoyer. What do you think Jed's doing? He's building the team where he thinks baseball's going. And that's exactly what happened, right? Like the Nico Horners of the world, you know, them being able to have guys like Frank Schwindel for small periods of time. And like, now you see this Cubs team and you're like, I get it, right? You have complement. You have guys that can hit for average and hit for power and play great defense up the middle, because then the shift rule came, like this whole big chaos. And now all of a sudden it's like, Juice nailed it. We were 2 years ahead of everybody else. We're like, he knew it was coming. And it was because just that connection to Theo Epstein, that's so fascinating.
Credit to you, Juice. Yeah, I mean, like the thing that gets me, especially with Jed and with Carter Hawkins too, I think he's awesome. And by the way, Jason Kanzler, newest addition to the Cubs front office. He's now the he's the director of player development with the Cubs.
Yes.
I got to know Kanzler pretty well out on the Cape. He was an assistant coach with the Brewster Whitecaps when I was calling games for Brewster. That guy ticks different, and he is the perfect add to the Cubs front office. But like, if we knew what was coming, who wouldn't have gotten Nico Horner and Dansby Swanson to be the up the middle tandem with the shift restrictions? Like, you're spot on, man. This was tailor made for the new version of baseball.
Yeah, and I mean, too, you look around that whole lineup the way it stands and the way it stood last year. There's some power in there, but every single position is an athlete. I mean, you look around that infield, you look around that outfield. I mean, even Yan Gomes, a guy who's a catcher, I mean, he's an MMA guy. Like he legitimately like trains in the offseason for MMA. That's how he gets his body ready for the year. And I don't know. I just found myself thinking, like, if I were Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer, like, there's a lot of downtime in baseball. We know that. What are we talking about? And I'm sure that question came across each other, and they said, if you were the commissioner, what would you do in a day? And Jack, that kind of gets me to my question to you. If you were commissioner, what are you doing to change baseball today? What more does it need? It's constantly changing, but I think that we're close, but we're not there to getting to the point where it's almost the perfect version of itself.
If there was a way to incentivize not walking guys, that is the final piece to the puzzle. My least favorite, and listen, I totally understand that there is immense value when you get to arbitration hearings, when you get to free agency, in walking as a hitter. But man, it is the worst thing in the world to watch as a fan. I do not want to see walks. If there was a way to incentivize pitchers not walking, or I think it would probably have to function as a penalty to the pitcher more so than, like negating the value to a hitter. I have no idea how to do it. People like Theo Epstein should figure out how to do it, but there needs to be something in place to negate the value of the walk.
I watch a lot of Bauer outage too. I'm a sucker for, why don't we just go full Trevor Bauer, Eric Sims, and it's a free fastball on a walk. Just one location, free fastball.
I like it.
I mean, it's just an idea. And two, like, I hate walks too. I hate anything that, it's downtime in the game. It's boring. You're right. You hit the nail on it. It's boring.
And things snowball there, man, because like 2 walks in an inning will probably turn into 3, which will probably turn into 4. And then you get a pitching change. That is always the recipe to a terrible inning as a consumer of the game. And you don't want to have terrible innings as consumers of the game.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's a great answer.
I think too. Well, and you factor into that now, right? Like, I think watching the pitch clock definitely made watching baseball on television, I think, more enjoyable, truthfully.
Yes.
But I think going to the ballpark, it is actually taken away from it a little bit. And it was because you could run and get a beer and come back, and you maybe only missed 2 batters or something like that. Now you go to the bathroom and get a beer at Wrigley in the 2nd inning, you're coming back, it's the bottom of the 3rd because everything's so quick. And it's like, I think to add to that point, it's just like, well, with that in mind, then you want that now shorter time frame to be more high impact plays. You want more steals. You want more. Juice has to get the light on. It gets dark quick, Juice.
I'm on Eastern time too, and this is my typical Bears on Tap show. I'm in the dark at the end of it because I don't.
It's true. It's just like a big black corner in the middle of the screen that happens. But like you just want the highest level of baseball possible, right? And it does feel like the walk takes away from that. So like when Ian Happ takes 4 walks in a game because he's one of the few players on the Cubs that actually kind of does that. Right. Like it's great if he gets on first and Nico Horner hits a double and he scores from first base. That's great. Yeah. But he walks and then it's 3 consecutive outs and they get nothing out of it. And you're like, that was the biggest waste of time I've ever seen in my entire life.
Right.
So definitely unfortunate. Well, we asked you this in the pregame show. So we knew that your once was a North Sider turned South Sider.
Yeah.
But we have to ask a question. Obviously you've grown up in the Chicagoland area. So for those listening, what was the growing up in Chicago like as a fan, and how, and this may be an extension of the question since we learned the answer talking to you before the show. How have you kind of positioned your fandom, I guess, from a standpoint now that you are actively within baseball?
Yeah.
And how do you consume Chicago baseball now as somebody who is effectively a member of the Pittsburgh Pirates organization, right? And
Right.
and how does that kind of play into it now too? That's something I'd be curious to hear.
So it's it's hilarious because I get that question from people that have no idea what's going on in my work life all the time. It's like, hey, so does that mean that you can still be a fan of the White Sox? I'm like, it totally does. Am I? Not really. Like, that might be the White Sox fault. That might also be just me kind of growing up in sports, I guess, and like realizing what working in sports is. So to answer the first question, and we talked about this before the recording started. I was born in Lincoln Park, grew up in Lincoln Park, first 5 years of my life. So the first photos I have at any sporting event was at Wrigley in the bleachers or like down the third base line in a Sammy Sosa onesie. Sammy Sosa was my, first favorite player, and it was amazing. And we were, we were at Surf and Broadway. I'm sure you guys, I was at Surf and Broadway. Then we moved out to Oak Park when I was 5. And, you still latch onto the Cubs, but it's like, hey, we got to, there's this convoluted way to get to Cubs games and all that. It took 45 minutes to get to Wrigley. It took 20 minutes to get to US Cellular. And I mentioned to you, like, I could either go see Randy Wells pitch and Tony Campana lead off for $50, or we could go see Chris Sale throw for, or Mark Burley at the end throw for $6. And like, that was easy for my parents. So I transitioned to a White Sox fandom, but I was never the kid that was like, I love the White Sox, I hate the Cubs. I always enjoyed the Cubs. And it was so much fun to like latch on to that when they were good. I had an amazing time watching the World Series in 2016 because I grew up going to that ballpark, man. That ballpark is just objectively better than US Cellular Field. So you enjoy that vibe. The other thing is, interning with WGN in 2017, the team was good. I got to sit in the back of both TV booths because that was the last year that WGN had a share of both teams. So I sat behind Benetti and Steve Stone, and I sat behind Len and JD. And dude, sitting in the back of that TV booth at Wrigley Field, Vince Scully once called it the best view in all of sports. And like, I can agree with that statement tenfold. It's just an easy place to fall in love with. And when that team is good, it makes a ton of sense. And then the second part of your question, I don't really consider myself a fan of the White Sox, the Cubs, the Pirates. Like, baseball fandom for me is gone. I latch on to individuals. I'm a fan of players that I have crossed paths with that I like. Especially because we can watch it in such a national sense. I mean, you turn on MLB TV, you can turn on any game you want. So yeah, like, I guess in terms of who I love the most, it would, I still have a soft spot for both Chicago teams, and then I'll watch as much Pirates baseball as I can because I've gotten to know those guys over the last 2 years.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think too, what you had to say about the Wrigley booth, like, Len was always very open and honest about like how great it is at Wrigley. And obviously now he's still in Chicago, just on the other side of town doing radio, which that is, I will listen to White Sox games on the radio just to hear Len. Like that's because for me as well, Jack, like growing up was Len Casper. Like that is what I identify Cubs baseball with. But like, I loved hearing, because we listened to it. We went to the Cubs convention this year as a group. It's so fun listening to Boog Sciambi talk about Wrigley Field. Because as somebody who, he's been all over, obviously, right? The Marlins, ESPN. So he's seen the entire league from a stadium standpoint. And he's like, it's so cool in the middle of the summer to look out over Wrigley Field that he's like taking pictures of the sunset because like it's just so picturesque. And he's like, you don't get that at every ballpark in America. No. And that's why it is so cool at Wrigley. And I will say, speaking of great ballparks, the PNC is very high up there for me.
I haven't been. I want to go. I haven't been.
You gotta go. I got lucky enough last year because I grew up on the south side. I'm originally from Oak Lawn. I now live out in Orland Park. But I've always been a Cubs fan because both of my parents grew up Cubs fans. My mom was, I'm looking at probably 15 signed baseballs over there with Ryan Sandberg, Mark Grace, Joe Girardi, any guy from the late 80s, early 90s when my mom had season tickets. And like, it's kind of weird because all of my friends are White Sox fans, like outside of a very small selection of them. And then obviously the guys here at Cubs on Tap. But so for a lot of my life, like I've probably been to the South Side just as much as I have the North Side. Maybe that's skewed probably a little bit in recent years.
South Side Ron coming out right now.
But like I've been there a lot, but we got the opportunity because the White Sox opened in Pittsburgh last year for Pittsburgh's opening day. And it happened to be my buddy's bachelor party, and he's a big Pittsburgh Penguins fan. And he was like, the Pens play Thursday night. The Sox get there Friday. Let's go. And we're like, all right, cool. And it was so cool because we sat up right up the second level behind home plate at PNC.
Yeah.
And some of my favorite just viewing from a ballpark I've ever experienced.
Now, did you get Permane Bros when you were there? I have had Permane Bros.
We got the Permane Bros in the stadium because the night we went to actual Permane Bros, the line was like out the door and we had to get to the Pens game. So we were like, we'll come back. And, we had to run away. But no, that was a great ballpark. Cause I've been to some really weird ones. It's not your traditional Midwest ballparks. Like I've been to Toronto. I've been to San Diego. I've been to Tampa. I've gone to a ton of games at the Trop. It's almost borderline disgusting the amount of games I've been to at Tropicana Field. But like PNC was cool. Like that one, and to me, that one and Rogers Center in Toronto, actually, outside of Wrigley, are like two of my favorite ballparks. And Petco is probably right up there too, because that's just gorgeous as well.
Now, might I say Camden Yards is like next level.
I have to go.
I've never been to Camden, but I was gonna say, because you guys did the show recently at Just Baseball, and I know you were banging the drum for Camden. You're like, you gotta go if you've never been.
You gotta go. The other one that I was banging the drum for was Estadio Juan Marichal in Santo Domingo. I went for Lidom this year. I saw Junior Lake play baseball 3 times in a week this winter. It was amazing. Best time ever. But yeah, like that's a crazy experience. Obviously, if you have interest in doing it, I would recommend doing it. But yeah, Camden Yards is like, if you're doing the ballpark thing and you want to see the best modern ballpark that's outside the cathedrals, like Wrigley, Fenway, Yankee, I think Camden Yards is there.
Okay. Duly noted.
I'm going to do there and Fenway all in one run. That's
I almost got out to Fenway actually recently, but I wasn't able to get there. It was a big bummer. But Jack, it's been fun, obviously, getting to talk to you. But now we got the hard hitting questions. We got to talk some Cubs baseball because very excited to hear again, especially from your national kind of viewpoint of how you consume baseball now. Just kind of getting your thoughts on what the Cubs look like going into the year. So we've got about 9 questions. It might become a few more based on conversation, but which offseason move for the Cubs did you like the most?
And have they made it yet?
No. Short answer, no, they haven't made it yet. So far, I did really like the Michael Busch pickup. I thought Busch and Yency Almonte really helps. But Ron, we were DMing a little bit about it. Neris is the best one that they have made. And Imanaga is great. Imanaga is a middle of the rotation guy. He's kind of a carbon copy of Steele, which I found interesting that they would do that with, like that fastball that plays well up, and like, how does it get that many whiffs at such a low velo, that kind of thing. But for me, like the Neris signing kind of solved a math problem that I was doing in my head. And I'm going to like throw it at you guys and like talk through it with me. You look at Steele. Best case scenario for Steele, complete game shutout. Best case scenario for all these guys, like Hendricks, Jordan Wicks, Tyone, complete game shutout. But let's take Jameson Tyone, who's the 3rd best starter in this rotation, probably. What is an attainable goal for Jameson Tyone every time he steps on the hill?
5 innings, 6 innings.
5?
5, 6.
I thought it was 6. I thought it was 6 a 3-run ball, like the bottom criteria for a quality start that results in a 4.5 ERA. 6 innings, 3-run ball. How do we get to Alzolay? He had 2 innings to fill. Alzolay, I think, is a good closer now. I don't think he's ever going to be an elite closer, but like I feel very comfortable with Alzolay, especially what he did after the All-Star break last year with him as the closer.
Yes.
So I was looking at 6 outs. How do you shrink that number? You go get a guy that had a freaking 1.7 ERA last year and has a splitter from hell in Neris. So all of a sudden, 6 outs becomes 3. And I trust an assortment of Merriweather, Yency Almonte, Smiley, Mark Leiter, whoever you want to run out there on any given night to get me 3 outs. If I'm giving a manager $40 million, like, it's crazy. But if I'm giving a manager $40 million, I want him to have some go-tos, and I want him to feel like he's making the right decision every time. And there are fewer things to make the right or wrong decision about now that you have a surefire 8th inning and a surefire 9th inning. And you think about Counsell for the last 6 years, Hader or Devin, he's always had an elite closer. So he's never had to think about the 9th. He still doesn't need to think about the 9th. Now I think Neris creates the benefit for Counsell to not have to think about the 8th either.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. I think too, we talked about it following the Neris signing here on the show. It's funny because there's so many reports in Chicago that have spun up over the last couple of weeks that guys like Luke Little, guys like Daniel Palencia have been working on a splitter this offseason, but with Tommy Hotovy and the pitching staff. So like when you had brought it up and then they did sign him and it's like, well, he has the splitter from hell. And it's like, because they just want to look at all these guys and say, do that, like throw that pitch. And we're going to be
only that
fine.
Easy.
Yeah, right. Of course. If only it were that
Hey, he's here. Now learn this.
Yeah. Just
my favorite thing about Eovaldi, Nathan Eovaldi learned his splitter in New York. He was always 100, right? He learned his splitter from Tanaka in New York. And within a year, this guy turned into a really good starting pitcher because he learned the splitter from Masahiro Tanaka. I'm not saying that Hector Neris is Tanaka, but you've got a guy that you can stand literally right next to in bullpens and be like, hey, how do you do that? And Neris is going to show you the ball, and you can slow-mo a cam, and you can see exactly how he releases it, and you can try your hardest to do the exact same thing.
100%. And then if it doesn't work for you, how can you tinker with it in a way that it does work for you? Yeah. I was just saying it was cool because last week we talked to Justin, and one of the questions we had for him was, how much interaction have you gotten to have with Shota? And he was like, yeah, CubsCon, we got to see him a little bit. He's like, but he's in Arizona now. So he watched my bullpen that I threw yesterday. And through his translator was like asking me questions. And we're like, that's really cool. And he's like, yeah, I cannot wait to watch him throw a bullpen. And then his tweet came out about how this dude's nasty. And we're like, we literally just talked to him about this. But it's that, like you said, though, it's getting to sit there and watch these guys, because now we all have in our heads, well, maybe Shota Imanaga is good for Justin Steele because Justin's been working on a changeup and a sinker that Shota has already arguably perfected.
Yes.
Maybe now all of a sudden Justin Steele has 2 additional pitches in his bag besides that beautiful fastball slider combination that he already has. Now maybe that 5th place NL Cy Young voting becomes 2nd place. Maybe he wins it.
Dude, you've got iron sharpening iron all over the place. And that is my favorite thing about spring training in particular. Like, I made this point with the Astros. Hunter Brown gets to go to camp in South Florida with Justin Verlander.
Yeah.
How beneficial is that for Hunter Brown, man? And I've talked to a couple of guys. Reed Detmers is a Springfield, Illinois guy. I talked to Reed about the Team USA collegiate national team, and he went out there with Asa Lacy, who at that point was the top 5 pick, and a couple other guys that, were top 10 caliber arms. And it's just Lions surrounding themselves with other Lions. You pick up on things they do. And in a collaborative environment like that, the world is their oyster. So, Shota and Steele working together, again, like carbon copies of each other. Mm-hmm. Think about how much better they can get at their thing collaboratively. It's really cool to think about.
It definitely is. It's something that I know I'm personally looking forward to, and I can't wait to see how that works out for both of them over the course of the year. What do the Cubs still need to do to be considered contenders? And this is not necessarily what do they need to do this offseason, because as Omar pointed out to us earlier, still no Cody Bellinger. There is no Matt Chapman walking through the door, at least not yet.
Right.
What are, when you look at this Cubs roster going into 2024, maybe even coupled with what's to come in the pipeline between now and we'll say the end of 25.
Yeah.
What is still one glaring hole that you look at and go, they need to do something about this if they ever truly want to be World Series contenders?
So I'll actually shift the question to you guys, and I'll pose it as like kind of an ultimatum. You get one of Cody Bellinger or Matt Chapman. Who do you want?
It's funny. We actually had this conversation on the show recently, and I've almost talked into Matt Chapman over Cody Bellinger. And the reason being the hard hit rate is huge. And Chapman last year, like everybody's like, oh, he was so terrible. He was this, he was that. Outside of his average, his numbers were eerily similar to that of Ian Happ's in his All-Star season. 17 bombs, 40 plus doubles. You get that guy in Wrigley though when the wind's blowing out in the middle of the summertime with that left center, just wind alley. And it's a position that the Cubs don't have a ton of depth in at the minors, because right now it's Matt Shaw who's playing out of position is really what their third base depth is in the minors.
Well, and like, who's the opening day third baseman? Is it Nick Madrigal? Like,
probably it might
right
be.
Now,
like, if you're being honest, it legitimately might be. It might be Patrick Wisdom. I mean, they did just bring him back for a hair under $3 million. So
yeah.
See, Jack, I go the other way on it because I like lefty power. I'm a sucker for lefty power, and it's Bellinger. And he just seems so in tune with that clubhouse too. Like when we talk to anybody, they're like, we need him back because he's such a good guy in the clubhouse.
Yep.
He gets us. He knows what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that I wouldn't like Chapman. It solves a position of need. Honestly, either of these guys at this point in the offseason are probably worth being happy about for sure if they come back. But I just look at lefty power, and the Cubs, again, another thing they don't have a lot of. So they got to find a way to fill lefty power if you're going to go the Chapman route, and there's just not much out there.
So now let me ask you, where is your level of concern with Pete Crow Armstrong? 1 being, I'm not concerned at all. 10 being, we got to package this guy and move on, and we need to find a different center fielder.
I think you go year to year with that. And I'm a guy who thinks he needs to start at AAA. We've talked about, and Ron agrees with this too.
I agree with that as well.
Yep.
I love his swag, and I saw a lot of him in South Bend. I know he's not a bad player. All this slander about 17 at bats and his
ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It's such a small sample size. It's not even funny. And half of those at bats were in the middle of a game. He's coming in cold off the bench,
right?
Not getting into the game flow. I love his ability and his defensive ability out there. I wish that he was more selective at the plate and had more of a an approach to it.
Yes.
Because when I watched him in South Bend, he was going up there and just better than everybody.
Yeah.
And I watched him in Iowa when he was on Marquee, and it was still the same. And I feel like the majors just slapped him in the face the minute he got there, because you truly need to go to the plate with an idea of what you're looking for. And so many times I just felt like he just was not at that maturity level to put together an at bat like that. And it's not to say that, like, I don't think that Cody Bellinger being there blocks him either. No. I mean, we're looking at Bush too, and who knows what they do with him. He could play third if
totally,
sort of. But I mean, it's early in his career too, where who knows if he pans out. And I know that they have, and Bellinger played a decent first base. So I just look at the lefty power, and I look at Pete Crow Armstrong, and I'm like, I still think he needs a lot of time in AAA.
Yeah,
I was going to say, I think with PCA, to what you said, Juice, like this year is a big year for PCA.
Oh yeah,
because I think he needs to go to AAA. I think if you start to see, there's so many pieces that have come out since the season ended about Jed Hoyer sitting down with PCA at the end of the year, and the comparisons to what that felt like when he was in San Diego with Anthony Rizzo, because Rizzo did the same thing. He came up late in the season with the Padres. He was awful. And they just told him, like, hey, you need to work on X, Y, and Z. He started doing that. Of course, the Cubs trade for him in the course of that offseason, one of the best trades that Theo and Jed ever made in Chicago. And the rest is history, because he refined his approach. He became a true hitter at the plate, and then became that 30-100 guy for the better part of 7-8 seasons with the Cubs. I think PCA this year, like the concern level is probably a 3 or 4 right now, because he's so young. Of, hey, let's see what he does at AAA. If he can go down and he hits continually, the defense is there, right? We all know the defense is there. The base running's there. None of that's a concern. It's just with him, the bat. And you can make the argument too that if you're the Cubs front office and you say, well, we like PCA and we think he can develop into that guy, but let's not forget we also have Kevin Alcantara still sitting in AA right now, who Juice. I mean, you saw a ton of him.
He's my favorite prospect, Jack.
He's a freak, man. He's Aram Layton's favorite prospect too. Like Aram was the high guy on him before anybody else in the industry. Had him planted on just baseball's top 100 before anybody else, and he is obsessed. You guys need to get Aram on just to wax poetic about Owen Casey.
We do. And that's the thing too, right? Like, going back to the Bellinger point, like, I sit and I think, well, left-handed power, where are they going to get it? Owen Casey is a perfect guy of getting that left-handed power here in the near future. Maybe they're able to do it with a couple of these other guys. It's just, there's so many moving pieces that, like, the concern level is not there yet necessarily with PCA. And I agree with Juice. I think you put it perfectly right. Like, and Jack, you've phrased this beautifully as well, because it shows, right? Either these players like fit a need the Cubs very clearly have.
Yeah.
I think though, right, it's then, well, how confident are you in what's behind them? Because if you're confident Matt Shaw can be a competent third baseman at the MLB level, and the bat plays the way it has through 3 levels already of minor league ball, then maybe Matt Shaw is your everyday third baseman for the next few years. Versus, well, what's PCA going to be? Is Kevin Alcantara going to stay healthy? Then that need, right, then filling in with Bellinger. Is Michael Busch going to be able to play an everyday first base in the major leagues? So in understanding where you're framing this up, because it really is, each one of those players can fill a need, but left-handed power and corner infielders, really, I will just say both positions at this point, are probably 2 of the biggest needs that the Cubs have.
Yeah, 100%. If I were in Jed and Carter's position, I think I would go into Bellinger negotiations with like a firm threshold that I'm willing to get to. And if Boris is still sitting here like, hey, he needs $200 million, I have to tap out. Like, I would do it for 170, for 200 when I can get Chapman for 120. Like, Bellinger's a year removed from a 650 OPS. And I know that he made changes, like necessary changes. And we know that the great Bellinger is in the tank, and it might have been unlocked again, but who's to say that it might get locked up, or like, it's not going to get locked up again. You know what I mean? It's been so finicky for this guy versus Chapman. He has such a high floor because he has won platinum gloves, like multiple platinum gloves. There is enough safe value in Chapman for me to not warrant overspending for a Cody Bellinger.
And it sounds like, based on what you're alluding to there, Jack, there was a report, actually literally just came out, I think an hour and a half before we all jumped on the microphone together, from Jesse Rogers. And he said, from what it sounds like, the Cubs have that threshold and they're not moving.
I didn't even see that. Yeah. I don't blame them for not moving. It's one of those where you have to be firm. And dude, like, I'm not giving Blake Snell 200. I'm not giving Cody Bellinger 200. It's bizarre where we've gotten with the 3, 4, 5 guys that are left.
Do you have an opinion on why that is, though, Jack? Is it the free agent class? Because I've seen a lot of that. I was listening to Bruce Levine. Bruce Levine was talking a lot about this free agent class just didn't get GMs excited after 2, maybe 3 names. Or do you think that there's like a structural problem with free agency?
I don't know if there's a structural problem. the way that I kind of view it is the guys that are left, you have way more concerns about what they're going to be at the price point than the others that have already signed. So like Neris, friendly price, right? Hader, friendly price. You knew he was going to get paid like Edwin Diaz. He got paid like Edwin Diaz. Ohtani, you knew he was going to set some sort of record. They did it in a creative way. And Yamamoto, you knew had the ability to come over and be a top 15 pitcher in the game from the jump. And that's what the Dodgers bet on. For the other guys that are left, Jordan Montgomery is a middle of the rotation guy. He is a mid-threes guy, typically, for 190 innings, but a mid-threes guy. He's going to get paid like a guy that can run out there and get a 2.5. He's never going to be a 2.5 guy. That's not his game. Blake Snell, yeah, he's got multiple Cy Youngs under his belt. He had a Cy Young in his walk year. Look at the years in between, man. Like, you're going to pay him like an ace. Yeah. Is he an ace? He wasn't making top 20 starting pitcher list going into 2023. Same deal with Chapman, man. Like, he's a couple years removed from that platinum glove, and the batting average just ticked down, like you said, Ron. But like, I don't. Everybody left has their flaws, and it's Scott Boris's job to try and mask those as best he can, and try and get teams to pay like they have no flaws. But you look at those players; they are clearly a step below who's already signed, and way more volatile than the players that have already signed.
One follow-up to that, Jack, and then we'll keep moving down the question list here. But because I know you guys over at Just Baseball are very big, you guys love discussing the analytics, and it's something that we enjoy immensely as well. Yeah. Do you think that MLB free agency has evolved the way it has because there is just more information on all of these players?
Yes, absolutely. And I also think that we're finding new ways to, I don't know, attach value to certain players. Like the Dodgers paid to run a monopoly on Japan. I think we've learned that. And like the
100%.
price, yeah. And like the price for a Japanese or Korean player is like going up because you know that you are going to get ratings and you're going to get jersey sales over there. Like the Giants don't fork over the money they did for Jung-Hoo Lee unless they know that they're getting one of the, like greatest players that Korea's produced in recent memory. So I understand it from that perspective. I also think there's enough numbers to make anyone look good now. And that might be jacking the price up. I mean, we'll find it. I know Ian Happ was doing a midday spot with Bernstein and Holmes for a while there. And at the beginning of the 22 season, I think he cited that his ex-Woba was good, even though he kind of started in a slump. And he went digging for a lowercase x and a lowercase w. And Ian Happ's a damn good player. But like, we've got guys that are going to look at their ex-Woba. I can find any number to convince you that any player is good. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the posturing that has become easier for agents in these free agent discussions and in these arbitration hearings. And it's the team's burden now to find proof beyond reasonable doubt that other metrics will point to that player not being as good as the metrics that, the agent has at their disposal.
Yeah, 100%. That's interesting. I like the way you framed that. And I was very curious to hear your thoughts on that as well. Cause that's been a very hot topic of discussion, I think, throughout the offseason, right? Is the structure of free agency, and just because everybody is just like, there are people at this point that are like, it's baseball season. And they're like, I don't care because there's still big free agents and we still have to hear about this BS still. And it's like,
right.
It's fair, right? Like it's a fair frustration to have because you look at all the other big sports, right? Like NHL, July 1st is my Christmas. Because it's just every other 3 seconds there's somebody signing. NBA free agency opening is the exact same way. And even NFL free agency is that way, right? It's a week and a half of just chaos.
Yeah.
Baseball's not like that. And I think that kills fans.
What I will also say is baseball is the most individualized game of all of those, where it is a benefit to sign early in the other sports because you get to know the playbook in football. You get to know teammates and the way that they kind of operate, the way they move on the ice or on the floor when it comes to hockey or basketball. With baseball, Matt Chapman's routine doesn't change until he shows up to the complex. And a pitcher, their routine doesn't change ever. Like there's a reason starting pitchers are plug and play and relievers are plug and play. Like they work on themselves and only themselves. And it's just a matter of, who's willing to pay or who they jive with to dictate who's on the front of their jersey.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point that others can keep in mind too. When those frustrations, I call them the old man yells at cloud syndrome, kind of sneaks into everybody's brains.
It's our game. We got to be okay with it. Like, we love it anyways. Like, I can yell at the cloud all I want. I'm not leaving. I know that this game has me tied.
Yeah. No, absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. As a part of you guys do the call up over at Just Baseball, and again, great work, especially from you and Arm. Who is the one Cubs prospect that you think will have the largest impact on the Cubs in 2024?
So I guess you still quantify Bush as a prospect and he'll play every day, but Cade Horton, like, Cade's got to be the guy. This rotation is missing the swing and miss 11 punch outs per 9 guy. And that's what Cade can be. And they're going to need that. I don't know, like, lack of a frontline starter. I think Justin is totally a frontline starter, but he does it in an unorthodox way. I think they need a guy that can go punch out 12, and that's Cade Horton. So that's my short answer. I hope Casey gets a shot. He probably won't get a shot. He'll probably just spend the entire year in Iowa. Matt Shaw could get a shot quickly, but, like, where's the space? It's probably at third base. I think it's the swing and miss starter in Cade. Yeah.
Owen Casey is a guy I really want to see get a shot. And my kind of, like, mental spicy take that I have for the season this year is we will see Matt Shaw and Owen Casey at some point. It might not be for very long, because, like, last year we only saw Matt Mervis for 3 weeks before he got sent back to Iowa for the rest of the year. But I think there's a world where an injury here, an injury there, Casey and Shaw are lighting the world on fire at, AA or AAA. They very easily could get that quick call and be, one of those kind of, like, plug and play guys
for sure.
Over the course. How do you see the NL Central playing out? Obviously, you're very in tune with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Who's winning the division? Who are the couple teams that you really think are in it, and who's, because I know you've spoken very highly, and I'm glad you did, because when I remember listening to you and Pete, and he'd say that the NL Central is the worst division of baseball, and I had the same reaction you did. I was like, there is no way it's worse than the AL Central. Absolutely no way. And I thought you gave a great explanation, but it does really feel like there are still, though, the clear, you think these are going to be the best teams, you think they got a shot, and then these, this team or that teams will be at the bottom. How do you, like, 1 through 5, how do you see kind of the NL Central shaking out in 24?
So I thought it was a fluke year for St. Louis. I still view St. Louis as the best team in the division. They have Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt. Like, it's impossible to deny. Mason Wynn was the best player I saw in AAA last year. He is a freak of all freaks. And about, the arm strength across the diamond, like, he can rip off 100 from shortstop, sure. But, like, dude's got juice. He's fast. Jordan Walker should be due for a huge year. And you guys know it as well as any fan base in baseball. Wilson Contreras was treated unfairly last year. That guy is good. He has issues, as I'm sure every Cubs fan knows. And it was kind of, you kind of like him when he's on your team. You hate him if he's on the other team. And
100%.
That is still the case. So I'm sure a lot of people are souring on Wilson, and his mannerisms at Wrigley last year certainly didn't help the cause, but he's a really good catcher. I think they are good all around. And I think Sonny Gray was a huge add for them. Milwaukee's weird, man, because they get rid of their ace. They get rid of a top 5 pitcher in baseball, but they've got the best catcher in baseball by WAR last year. They've got a young, exciting outfield. I love Sal Frelick, former guest of the Just Baseball show. Like, Freddie Peralta can absolutely be that gross frontline guy. I don't know what they do with Adames and Devin Williams. If they hold both, I still think they can be good, but I actually kind of put the Cubs right there with Milwaukee. It's, like, really close. Cincinnati's not far behind too. So I'd say tier 1 barely is St. Louis. The middle 3 are Milwaukee, Chicago, and Cincinnati. I'll line them up. And Ellie De La Cruz is going to be must watch. I know a lot of people, like, somehow soured on that dude. Like, why? Because the K rate was high?
Hearing his projected WAR projections, like, I was confused.
Like, what are we doing? Like, he's an alien life form. Same thing with O'Neal Cruz. I'm like, why are they so low? They're freakazoids. Like,
people just forgot what
they forgot. They forgot. O'Neal Cruz is going to go 30-30, and people are going to be like, wow, I didn't see that coming. Are you sure? He's 6'7" and a freak.
Open your eyes.
Yeah, and like even the Pirates, man, like, hey, they may be the 5th best team on paper, but like this thing can shake out any which way. I do think that the Cardinals, in terms of on-field talent, are number 1. But dude, this thing's going to be so tight, and I'm so excited to watch that thing play out.
I was going to say, in my eyes, looking across baseball right now, and Juice, I don't know if you agree with me on this. Like, I look across baseball, and I think the only division I could see being as close as the NL Central is like the AL East.
Yeah.
And that's probably about it. Because like every other division, right, you still got great teams, right? Like the NL East, you still got your big 3 juggernauts. You know, the NL West.
You got throwaways. Like, the Nats aren't competing.
No, the Nats aren't competing. The Rockies aren't competing. Like, there are very clear non-competitive teams in most divisions in baseball.
Yes.
The AL East is like the one, like, even the worst teams got a weird shot.
Well, and even then, man, like, so, all right, on paper, the Red Sox are the worst team in the American League East. You compare them to the best team in the AL East, let's call it Baltimore, especially with the addition of Burns.
100%.
The difference between Baltimore and Boston, I think, is more drastic than the difference between St. Louis and Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's crazy in baseball.
It really is. It's going to be fun. It's really going to be a blast. Jack, you have seen more minor leaguers for the Pirates than anybody. You're probably more familiar with their roster than just about anybody, except people that maybe live in Pittsburgh. And even then, we can probably make the argument. Who's the next Cubs killer? Because there's always one on every NL Central team.
Yeah.
Who's the next Cubs killer coming out of Pittsburgh? Or is he already there and he's just going to get better?
Is it Tamar?
So, is it who?
Is it Tamar?
Might be Tamar. That guy's a freak.
I know.
Skeens is going to be an everybody killer. Like, he's next level. What I will say is Sawinski and Priester both grew up Cubs fans.
I know.
There's
Sawinski, every time that dude comes to Wrigley, has a good game. And I'm just like,
every time?
Why? You have a 214, like 320, 470 slash line. Yeah. Like, why are you putting up these numbers at Wrigley Field? And like you said, though, I every time I'm like, he's a hometown kid, and you know they love to show out when they go home. And
he's a North Sider. Yeah, Sawinski and Priester.
Alex Thomas is the same way with the Diamondbacks.
I'm sure.
Every time,
if he ever came, he would rip through the White Sox.
Even the North Side. I mean, the last couple years, I feel like every Diamondbacks game I remember, like obviously last year they were a good team, but I remember in 2022 when they weren't good, they would come in and just shit whip the Cubs in a 3-game series. And Alex Thomas, he had I think a 3-game stretch at Wrigley. I recall. I think he hit 4 home runs in 3 games at Wrigley Field. And it was in like the worst conditions possible too. The wind was blowing in. It was like early May. And yet he's just launching balls into the stratosphere. It was crazy. But yeah, that hometown connection is a real thing, man. And it scares the shit out of me with guys like Sawinski. Yeah. I won't sit here and lie to you. As of right now, I think I know the answer, but I still want to hear it. Would you consider the Cubs offseason, as of this very moment that we are speaking, a success?
Man, like,
you could be honest.
Yeah, like, no, I guess we were told they were going to spend huge, and they haven't spent huge. They've spent, which I appreciate because there are teams that aren't spending,
right?
But they haven't spent huge. Like Imanaga and the trade for Bush and signing Neris is good, but they moved the goalposts on themselves at the end of the season when Jed made those remarks, and when they fired David Ross and replaced him with Counsell. I was like, oh boy, like rub your hands together, lick your lips. It's time to go with the Cubs offseason. And we were thinking it was going to be the Cubs and the Dodgers that owned the offseason. And it's the Dodgers that have owned the offseason. It's like, all right, the Cubs for me are a step behind what the Reds have done. I think the Reds have been the darling of the offseason. The Cubs have gotten better, but I thought you were going to get great, and they just haven't done it yet.
Yeah, I've said on here that it's a great offseason if they're middle market. But because they're the Cubs, and they, like you said, they said they were going to spend huge, it's average to below average, I think, in a lot of people's minds.
Yeah.
But like I said, there's still, as Jed says, we're still in the fifth inning. You know, I feel like we've been in the fifth inning for a long time here.
We might be at the stretch now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think we're beyond the stretch. I think Adbert's already warming up in the pen at this point.
Maybe.
That's where we're starting to get to here. But Jack, I feel like this question dominates baseball right now, but we've got to ask it. Where do the Boras 4 end up? Because it feels like they're going to sign probably. I feel like the Jorge Soler signing today is the first spark that's going to just create a crazy run over the next 5-6 days of guys signing. But where do those 4 end up in your eyes? Does Bellinger still become a Cub and the other 3 go where? Or how do you see things shaking out with those 4?
That's a great question. I saw Morosi tweet something, and I just wanted to read this. Yeah, he tweeted this morning. As MLB clubs negotiate with free agents, Wednesday is a possible inflection point. Tomorrow, meaning, Wednesday, all teams will have the ability to place players on the 60-day injured list, thus freeing up 40-man roster spots for free agent signings. Could be an active 48 hours.
Yep, I saw that too today. So that it's funny because we had this question was before that, but I saw that earlier and I was like, oh, this is perfect. We're going to tee this up and things are going to get crazy now.
Easy peasy. All right. Bellinger, not Chicago. I don't think they budge. I think San Francisco is still the spot. I think he could end up in San Francisco or LA. San Francisco has been begging to dish out money. And I just made this point on tomorrow's Just Baseball show. San Francisco seems very stuck without an elite position player. And because they've struck out on Judge and Correa and Ohtani and Yamamoto, like they've struck out on enough elite players to gaslight themselves into thinking that Cody Bellinger is that elite player that is the final piece in the puzzle. So, I think they could convince themselves to go do it. So Belly, I'll say San Fran. Chapman, I will say the Cubs. If Bellinger's off the table, it seems like they have money to spend. I think Matt Chapman's the guy there. The weird spin zone that I've done on the Just Baseball show, Jordan Montgomery's wife has a dermatology residency starting in the Boston area. That's a 4-year residency. I think it's at Northeastern. Why would Jordan Montgomery not just sign a 4-year deal with the Boston Red Sox? So I could see that, it was nice. He said, I feel like I'm happy being the dumb one in the relationship. I read an article like this past fall about it because his wife's going to be a dumb.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, right. I'm very happy being a dumb one. My girlfriend's in medical school right now. I'm thrilled being the dumb one. And then Snell, dude, I don't know where Snell's going to. I'll say Anaheim because he's bag chasing. It seems like this guy wants $200 million. If there's anybody that's going to hand out $200 million to the wrong guy, it's probably Artie Moreno and the LA Angels.
100%. I was going to say I enjoyed the Jordan Montgomery take when you first shared it.
Yeah.
Because it's happened in recent sports. Jacob Trouba got traded to the New York Rangers because of his significant other. Like he wanted to go to New York to be closer to her. That was a legitimate thing because being in Winnipeg, it was really hard for them to make that work.
I'm sure.
And now he's, the captain of the New York Rangers and you love him if he's on your team and you despise him if he's not. And it worked out for them. And it's like, what if that happens to Jordan Montgomery and the Red Sox? And especially now that they got our old buddy Craig Breslow and, what's that going to do? Get a good arm in there to help with the pitching staff. And it makes too much sense. And then that just the curveball on top of it makes it even better, truthfully. Yeah. This one comes from Tyler, who unfortunately wasn't able to join us. He was originally hoping to, and he wasn't able to join us today. He says, you guys recently ranked Nico Horner, the number 8 second baseman in baseball in your top 10 list. He asks, why wasn't he number 1?
Good question, Tyler. There's a guy in LA who's going to play second base full-time there. Have you heard of him? Betts.
Yeah, he's quite
blanking
good
on the first name. Yeah, but Betts is his
guy.
name. And then you got Semyon, Altuve, Ketel Marte. List keeps going. I love Nico, but he's a 105 WRC plus guy.
Right.
He's not going to hit 20 bombs. There are enough second basemen. Like, listen, are we taking Gold Glove defense and 8 homers, or are we taking 30 and 100 from the second base position in Ozzie Albies, who's playing average second base defense? Like, I don't know. It's such a bat dominated game. Give me the guy that's going to hit 30 nukes, and unfortunately, he's just not going to do that. Yeah,
100%. And I think the question you posed with Arm of Cubs and Cardinals fans, who's better, Tommy Edman or Nico Horner? And they are very similar players. I do agree in the sense that Edman provides the multi-positional upside.
And Nico could do it too, but like he hasn't been afforded the opportunity in Chicago.
Right. So in my head, like everybody in Chicago loves Nico, right? Because he's the golden boy, right? He's just a
great extension, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Unreal contract. I mean, I think both of those contracts, truthfully, I think the Ian Happ one as well. I think we're slam dunks for the Cubs with Jed, because it at least gives you that stability for the next. It was effectively 4 years when they signed him, right? The last season and now the next 3. And then, God forbid they continue to draft the way they have and have one of the top 5 farms in baseball. Right. Oh, we can't pay you what you want? Oh, darn. Well, that's funny. We got a dude down in Iowa that's like knocking on the door, and we have to let him in.
Ron, you alluding to my theory that he doesn't make it to the end of the contract?
I am not alluding to your theory, but you can share that one with Jack, because I want to get his take on it.
Because they're so stacked in the minor leagues at that position, I don't think he makes it to the end of that contract, because I think they trade him.
He being Nico Horner. It's spicy.
That's just. I mean, it's tinfoil hat.
It's good. I think it's probably not probably. I think it's entirely dependent on where they are as a team, right? Like, if they're competing for division titles and if they have a World Series within grasp, which is the way they're positioning themselves, you stick with the guy that will have 5 years under his belt at the time, as opposed to, hey, we got this guy for $750,000 this year, But I like the theory in terms of execution. Seems situational.
Yeah, no, it's completely tinfoil hat. I think the Cubs are going to be good in 2 years.
I love it.
It's a good one. That one got a lot of eyebrow raises the night that Juice decided to share.
Yeah, and Tyler hated it. Actually, everybody on this panel hated it, which meant it was a good take.
Yes, 100%.
Well, it's fun. We can't always all agree. It doesn't make it fun then to sit here and debate if we all.
And it's kind of fun going rogue too, isn't it, Juice?
Oh, dude, I am the roguest of the rogue from this group. Honestly, probably
the bad boy, huh?
Well, when you have just the nickname and not your real name on the thing, you got to uphold a little bit of a reputation.
Understood.
Jack, final Cubs focus question for you here. Who's the Cub player that fans should expect to take a massive leap in 24?
I have been so in between on Seiya. I think he's going to go off. I'm really excited. And this may be the year that I fully believe that the contract is worth its value, because you're paying him a lot for a 790 OPS and fine defense in the outfield and nothing on the base paths. It just seems like he was leaving something on the table each of the past 2 years, but he got better in year 2. This could be the year that you see the 30 homers from Seiya and you see middle of the order masher for the Cubs. And he and Yoshida for me are very similar, because they were high priced IFA guys that got off to a strong start. Everybody loved. And then they stumbled a little bit back half of their first year, and you forget how good they were in Japan, and you forget how good they can be for you. I think Yoshida can be an awesome hitter for Boston, and I think Seiya can be an awesome hitter for the Cubs, and he's been good. I think this is the year he becomes awesome.
I love that take, and he's a guy too that I think we've been high on at Cubs on Tap. I think a lot of Cubs fans are too, because when he was finally fully healthy last year, late in the year, I mean, him and Bellinger carried the team from the end of July to the end of the season.
And the thing is, man, that guy turned into an afterthought because of the first year and a half, right? It was all of a sudden he was the focal point at the beginning of the 2022 season. And by the end of 23, he's the 5th guy on the scouting report. And that opens a level of freedom that you don't get often as an $85 million guy.
100%.
I didn't even think of it that way. That's a good thought.
Amen.
I too am excited for a Seiya Suzuki breakout, hopefully. And I hope
Jack makes us smarter, Ron.
Jack doesn't. Why do you think I listen?
I take these off. I'm a moron. It's just the glasses. It's the clear frame that are in.
Hey, there's a reason that I tune in regularly to the Just Baseball show because I enjoy listening to you guys. And again, there's a lot of things. Admittedly, you can ask Juice, you can ask all the guys on here. I've more than once been like, on Just Baseball, they said this, and I really like this because of X, Y, and Z. And like, put a little more of a, just a Cubs kind of taste on it because we're a little, closer and we see it just every single waking day of our lives.
Yeah.
But no, again, you guys are doing great stuff over there. One final fun comment here. Darren, a loyal listener of ours, he says, man, Jack has a voice custom made for radio. He's been told that he has a face for radio. And Bernie ended up agreeing with that, but you do have the play-by-play voice, sir. I know Pete is banging the drum for the MLB play-by-play job. I am also banging that drum.
Appreciate you,
future fortune, because you're one of a kind, man. We appreciate you joining us today. I feel like we could sit here and talk a whole nother 2 hours about baseball, but people might start yelling at us and telling us to get off of YouTube. So
100%, like, hey, go get a life. Touch grass is my favorite comment that I get consistently. Like, hey, get off the spreadsheet, go touch grass. Yeah. I'm like, well, like, my girlfriend lives 4 hours away. I'm in Indianapolis. What do you want me to do? Like, I'd rather just sit here and go on Fangraphs. So it's one of those. But no, man, I appreciate you guys. This is awesome. So whenever you're looking for an hour to fill during the season, hit me up. I'm around.
Deal.
This was so much fun.
Yeah, this was great, man. We certainly appreciate you joining us. For everybody listening, as always, Cubs on Tap. You know where to follow us at Cubbies on Tap on the socials, ontapsportsnet.com, at ontapsportsnet on the socials. Jack, you are at Jack_McMullen11. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then at JustBB_media.
Yeah, Just BB Media got pinched by Fox Sports MLB during the 2022 World Series. We were clipping their highlights and they flat Fox. It's no other RSN. It's not ESPN. It's not TBS, nothing like that. They will not flag posting baseball highlights. Only Fox flags posting baseball highlights. So Just BB Media got pinched during the World Series in 22. But now it's Just BB_media.
So there you go. So if you're not following sincerely, go follow the Just Baseball guys. You guys are incredible. Huge fans. I definitely, Aram is on my list to get on. Maybe later in the season, the Yankees come to Wrigley, so we can hit up Pete and get his, non-biased takes by any means about the New York Yankees. Impossible. Yeah. I know. No, you guys are awesome. We appreciate the hell out of you joining us today, Jack, and we'll definitely be in touch. But before we get out of here, everybody, as always, let's go Cubbies.